Hi, everyone. This is Debbie, and welcome back to the Transition Bridge podcast. This is the podcast where we come together each and every week to discover more about the purpose and the power of life's transitions. If you find yourself maybe in this middle of a difficult season in your life, I want to also remind you that I am also your certified life transition coach. So if you're looking for some more clarity or strategy, just connect with me in the Calendly link below. And one of the transitions that I love to work with is the empty nest transition. So if you're a mom and your children are leaving your nest and you're just wondering what's next, why don't you connect with me? In fact, if you have a group of girlfriends that are just going through the same season with you, let's do something together. Let's do a group coaching together. I would love to do that for you. So connect with me in my show notes, and I'd love to meet you. Now, getting back to our episode today, if you have a child that is being challenged with their speech development, in today's episode, you're going to find so much hope, answers, and strategies to help you and your child to understand and to be able to communicate better. You're going to love my guest, Dinalynn Rosenbush. She is a consultant, a parenting coach, a speaker, and a 30-year public school speech language pathologist. She's also an international best-selling author and the creator and host of the top 1.5% podcast called The Language of Play. Now, Dinalynn helps parents understand to help children communicate so that they can actually connect more deeply with their children. She gives practical daily strategies for building speech and language skills during your normal daily activities. She can equip you to communicate better with your children, even in the presence of a delay. So, Dinalynn, she loves to empower you and grandparents through education and guidance. So, welcome, Dinalynn, to the Transition Bridge podcast. It's such an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you, Debbie. It is an honor to be here. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. So nice.
Well,
Yes,
you are
thank you.
so welcome. Absolutely. Well, I met you recently at another event, and when I heard what you do, I thought, my audience needs to hear from you, learn from you, because we all have children. Even one of my grandchildren struggle with their communication. And so I thought this would be so wonderful to learn from you. And of course, you are an expert in this field. But everyone who comes on always has a story of transition that takes you to where you are today. So can you share with us briefly your transition story and how it is that now you are in this space doing what you do?
Good question. I love it. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yes. After college, I went right into work as a speech language pathologist. And then I did that for a long time. And then the big transition was that was bit by a deer tick. I ended up with Lyme disease. And I went to the doctor when I had the tick on me. I brought the tick in, the rashes on my belly. They said, that's not Lyme disease. And so I
Oh,
left happy, not knowing anything yet about Lyme. And I left thinking I'd be fine. And 14 months later, I couldn't see, walk, or talk properly. And then I was treated with boatloads of medicines. And then I got desperately ill, spent most of 2 years in a bed. And then I
mm.
was in Eastern medicine. And then I finally recovered. And obviously, I'm doing fine now.
Oh,
But
thank God.
it was a long journey. And then to recover from something that big means your body has been, if you're laying down for a long period of time, you need to regain your strength. You need to regain your stamina,
Yes.
your balance, all the things. I had to regain my sight. I had to regain, like all the things.
Mm.
So in that process, then I started thinking, well, what am I going to do now for work? And I thought, what do I love about the job that I do? And what do I not like about the job that I do? And how can I create something where what I'm doing is the part that I love and I don't have to do the part that I don't like? Well, for me, the part that I did not like was all the paperwork. When you work in
Mm.
special education, you've got law and you've got paperwork, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and I can do it. I'm good at it. After 30 years, you better be good at it. And I don't like the sitting at the computer writing all those details in the
Mm.
notes. But I love teaching families. I love working with kids. I love seeing the big change that we make in a student's life and in a family's home by the work we do as speech paths. So then I thought, well, as I'm recovering, what I can do, I've got the energy. I can start a podcast. I can just start teaching. And so I started teaching in my podcast for about a year and a half. Then I thought, okay, now I'm better yet. I'm going to start coaching families. And I did that. And then, so yeah, that's what I'm doing now. I'm coaching families. So I get to do the teaching and the transformation that happens in the children's lives. Parents learn how they can teach themselves, how they can impact. Because really, when parents learn how to teach the small bits like speech sounds, it's easy to generalize that learning into teaching other skills because you understand how to look at things at a minuscule change and you understand how the child brain works. So, watching the family
Mm.
transition into having joyful, happier, more connected homes is the part of my job I get to keep now. And the paperwork stuff is what I get to let go of.
Oh, I love that story because you find your purpose, your passion, and you just do it full on. That is just so beautiful. So I do have a question for you, and I think this happens a lot. So sometimes well-meaning friends, may say, give it some time. It'll work out. Like if a parent's struggling and their child is really having challenges to communicate. As a speech pathologist and your perspective, when does waiting become that missed opportunity for the child to even get help?
That is a really important piece of what I like to teach. So thank you
Yes.
for asking that. Yes, many kids will acquire their sounds as they get older. But I want to tell parents it's like tying shoes. Let's think about how long does it take them to learn to tie a shoe? Faster if you help them, right?
Yes.
How if your child is brushing their teeth, they can learn to brush their teeth and every time they go to the dentist, they get a little bit more instruction on how to brush their teeth well. But if you do it daily, they brush their teeth better because you're dripping the information on them as we go. And speech sounds, it seems to be, or vocabulary building, or how do you
Mhm.
build sentences once you have words, seems to be an ambiguous skill for most parents. And so they sit back, afraid that they're going to hurt their kids' feelings or just waiting for it to happen spontaneously. And I think, no, don't do that because these kids are ready to learn. And especially when you have the 0 to 7 and and the younger, the more important it is. Just show them. Just teach them. And if you don't know how, ask somebody. So let me give you one example. A lot of
Yes.
people say our sound is so hard for kids. But that's not necessarily true because we've got plenty of 1 year olds that say R. Like it's true. It's not all kids. It's not like that sound is hard for all kids, but we have this idea that it is because it matures more often later. But the
Oh.
strategy that you use behind that is that you put that sound in your child's ears. So if you're going to play with your child and you're going to play bear or you're going to play car or boat or any of these things, you, as the caregiver, your only sound until they acquire it is like ER kind of not or, like R is changed by the vowel that's next to it. So you're going to choose the ER sound, and until your child acquires it, the job is yours. And if you start that play, your child will probably have the R sound really close to the time they begin talking. So, like 14, 16 months, that R will probably be in place if you plant it in their ears early on. And you are doing the work, they are just absorbing.
So are you planning that R sound even before they get to the place where they will are
Yeah,
developed enough to begin speaking that R sound?
I do coach parents to do that because,
Okay.
especially if in the family you have a propensity for, My first child struggled with R. My next child struggled with R. I struggled with R as a child. And that's common. That's very common. Everybody struggles with kind of the same sound categories. So, therefore,
Interesting.
if you know that this is in your history, when your baby is 6 months, 8 months old, and they're crawling across the floor and you're chasing them crawling, you're going to still put on some of that so that you're planting it in their ears, because R is a sound that kids learn by hearing it, not by watching you, because you can't see it. It's inside. And so they're trying to copy what
Hmm.
they hear, but they don't have it well planted in their ears. So you're attuning them
I
to hear
like
it.
that idea.
Yeah, so there's one example of how when when we know what to do early on, we don't
Hmm.
wait and see. We we do the work of planting a sound or showing a sound along the way, and the kids say, "Oh, okay, that's how you say it." And then they try or they work with you, especially if you can stay in play. If it's playful, it stays joyful, it stays fun, and then they're not resisting. And if that pattern of interaction happens early, like from the earliest days, then they don't reject learning from you.
I love the idea that you can start early to prevent something that could potentially happen. I know my oldest
Mm-hmm.
son struggled with R,
It's
and
probably the most
we
common sound.
yes. And I love the idea of play, that this is just so the child doesn't feel stigmatized or because I know my son really struggled. They would take him out of his classroom to go to speech therapy, and he really struggled with that. And this wasn't until he was like in first or second grade. Actually, they identified it at the school and said he needs help. I didn't, I just thought he would grow out of that. So,
Mm-hmm. Lots
yeah.
of parents think, oh, that's just how they talk. That's so cute. It's
Mm-hmm.
young. He'll grow out of it. And all those
Mm-hmm.
things are sweet. Like I had little words that I saved with my children too because they were particularly cute. So Joseph was Jophus, yogurt was Yorgit. There's a few words that were just really cute, and so we saved a few of the fun words. But also, I wanted to make sure they could say the words and the sounds correctly along the way.
So, along the way, I love that. So, is there a benchmark that, sometimes we think our children should know so many words by the age of 2? But language sometimes is just more than words. Are there benchmarks that parents should be looking for, like that are like the hidden
Mm-hmm.
nonverbal communications that are letting us know maybe something's going on?
There are many, many, many benchmarks, whether we're talking about gestural type of communication or we're talking about vocabulary building, sound building, language, sentence, all
Mhm.
the different areas, and there's more. So there's lots of different benchmarks. The thing I like to tell parents is those benchmarks are usually, oh, if your child isn't at this level, go get some help. So when we think of how a child is performing, and
Mhm.
that's a bad word for this, let me say they're developing, then we look at what they've got. So if there's a range of, let's say we want our children to have between 20 and 50 words. And if you go to the pediatrician, they look at the benchmark as 20. We want them between 20 and 50. The benchmark is considered 20. So if they're at 20, the doctor says they're fine.
Interesting.
But really, if the norms is 20 to 50, that's the benchmark in a range. I mean, that's where you want the child to go, right? And
Mhm.
then that line of concern is what a doctor looks at. Parents are told they're fine, they don't continue to pursue. I say continue to pursue because what I want to say to families is, let's say if the norms are 20 to 50 at a certain age range, then let's try to be closer to that 50 or 60 or 70 because we know that kids go far beyond also. You know, if our norm is right here in the middle, we've got lots of people on both ends.
Mhm.
So always bring your child towards the potential that they have, is the way I see it.
No, I love that because then it's limitless in a way. In other words,
Exactly.
if you just put them into a box and say, okay, you're in the normal range, but their brains probably can learn so much more. We are technically holding them back in a way.
Exactly. Yes. And for many kids, that happens. Another thing that I see commonly that parents do is they have a categories, uh, um, words that are grown up words and words that are kid words. And I'm saying,
Oh,
no,
that's true.
that's
That's
not true.
true.
So if you're going to say a temperature of a water, for example, we can say hot and cold. And if you think about learning a second language, you learn hot and cold. But really, we've got other terms. We've got lukewarm, we've got tepid, we've got all kinds of words that can
Hmm.
change from hot or cold. There's a range there. None of those words are grown up words. All of those words just describe the temperature. Give them to your child at every age. Use those words around your child. We accept whatever they tell us, but they're going to use the words that are most frequently presented to them. So present them all.
That makes sense. We feel like they have to get to a certain age before we give them the mature adult word. And what I hear you saying is give it to them earlier because that's
Yeah,
the
because
true word.
it's a word. It's not an adult word. It's a word.
It's a
Concepts
word.
can be adult
Hmm.
concepts. You know, like there are topics we're not going to talk about with our young children because the topic, the concept is not appropriate for them or safe. But a word doesn't have an age limit.
That is so interesting. I never thought about that, but that's so true. I,
My,
I'm
I'll
just
just tell.
thinking about it. Yeah. And then sometimes when you hear a very young child use a mature word, we all go, because we're
Exactly.
shocked. Like, oh, how do they know that? But the
Right. And
parent
it's
taught them.
just because the parent used the word around them. And so now I've got grandchildren and my daughter is talking with her son and he came over to my house and I had just gotten a different car and I said to him, "What color's the car?" He says, "It's magenta." I was expecting him to say blue, but I know that she is good at expanding vocabulary. So I just wanted to know what he would say. And he's 4 and he talks about all kinds of things using specific vocabulary because he works in the garage with his dad. So he knows the different names of the different tools. And he knows to, crank something or turn something, like the different descriptors that we would use because it's used around him. They didn't
Yes.
withhold those words by saying this way and just saying this and that and this and that. And I
As
got on my daughter because she was doing that, and that's why they transitioned into I'm they're saying this all the time instead of giving me the specific words. I'm saying that's because you're saying this all the time.
oh gosh, that's like a light bulb moment here. It's so true because we think they can't handle the true words. So we just keep it so simple. And as I'm listening to you, Dina Lynn, I'm just imagining you're actually equipping your children to become better readers.
Absolutely, all of reading is based in language.
Yes.
And so we want our children to have vocabulary, which, by the way, is the number one indicator of success in children over time. Vocabulary.
Yes.
And then our sound system and how well our children can hear and differentiate sounds. This would go back to rhyming patterns, finger plays, rhythm and beat, song, all of that is your foundation for decoding. So if you skip that and jump to trying to have your children have letters, have sounds, you're giving them the windows of the house before you put the foundation in. They need the foundation, which is how do I manipulate sound in my mind and understand sound in my mind that begins to say words. Words develop into more complexity. Words can be changed with one sound. Like if I have a cat and I add a s on the end, it becomes plural, so it's cats. And that one little sound your children need to learn to recognize in listening because all of those things linked together have lots of different words with the minimal sound changes and the meaning changes. Now they get all of that um, expression in sound play. Then they go to decoding. Now they have meaning when they're decoding.
Okay, so explain the decoding more. So,
Decoding is when you look at the letters that are written on a page and you can read them. You know that BAT says b, a, t, and you can
okay.
put it together and you have bat. That would be decoding. Meaning is that in your mind now you have a picture of a little black winged mouse. You have that image in your mind, or maybe you've got a baseball bat, or maybe you've got, like whatever kind of bat we're talking about. So you've got the image in your mind, which is going to go back to the listening piece. You've got the sound play that goes back to the listening piece, which helps you to decode. So your foundation for everything is in the ears before the eyes.
Oh, I never thought about that. Okay. Okay.
And that would be a huge piece for moms and dads, if and for grandparents. When you're playing with the kiddos, it is so tempting to take out a book and think to do school, as if you're helping with school. But you can do more impact helping a child learn how to read by two things. One is what I was just talking about. You're going to do song, finger play, rhythm, rhyming, alliteration, all of that sound play. And the next thing is sleep.
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 Okay.
You put those things together and you're feeding the brain what it needs to learn to read.
But okay, so what about sleep?
Sleep allows all that learning to make sense. When you
Okay.
allow the brain to rest in sleep, it starts to sort and organize all of these pieces that we just talked about: rhythm,
Okay.
sound, song, all of that stuff. And it organizes it. And without sleep, it stays disorganized. Sleep is the time the children organize the things that they were exposed to during the day. Then, when you have good sleep, they start fresh with an organized mind to be able to decode. And then, when they have the vocabulary, once they have decoded it, now they've got the image in their mind. And then they have meaning.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. Mm-hmm.
And so the language of play, I love how you
Yeah.
shared song and rhythm. And, we all love those,
Mm-hmm.
row, row, row your boat and, this old man, those type of songs. Are there specific songs that you recommend or take us through like what you would say to a mother or a grandparent about song, about rhythm, and just making that a part of like a daily activity with
Mm-hmm.
their children or grandchildren?
Love that. I always lean towards, what do you already do? So if they're
Okay.
not regularly doing this old man, then what do they normally do? If they're listening to Taylor Swift, they've got a different rhythm. That's okay. You take that rhythm, that song, and you put the words to it that you want your child to do. So if maybe it's going to be Johnny Cash, if we're talking some older grandparents, whatever it is. And then the message that you want your child to get, you just put into the rhythm of that song. So maybe
Okay.
you're going to say, it's now I can only think at this moment of merry-go-round kind of songs, but so I'm going to use that because I'm being interviewed here. Like I can't think of more current song, but so you might say, it's time to wash your hands. It's time to wash your hands. Go to the bathroom. It's time to wash your hands. Like if you want your child to do something, pick the song, the rhythm that you're used to listening to so that you can just instantly put any old words to it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in tune. It doesn't have to be right grammatically. In those moments, you capture their attention and suddenly they think, we're having fun. And they go wash their hands and it's this joyful experience and they get to the table ready to eat because they just had some fun play with you. And it is a drip that you can put on them, but it is super effective.
I just love that song that you chose because, you're hearing it, but you're seeing it and you're doing it. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's all connected.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you
So,
can use anything that is outside of the do it kind of expression, children become it more. So if you can stay in that play, which is okay, so now I'm going to take this a little differently. When I define play. I have kind of my own definition that I've
Okay,
come up
yeah,
with.
tell us.
So when we talk about play, lots of moms and dads think of Legos. And I use that as an example. It is play. It's wonderful play. I love Legos. It's
Mhm.
great. But when we isolate the idea of play into an object that we need to listen, or an object that we manipulate, and we sit down, we exit our normal world and join them in this particular play, then that is only one form of play. In the mindset, however, of play, we need to remember that what's going on for the child is discovery, exploration, invention, joy, just this whimsical kind of what happens if I? They're in that space. That's where their brain is naturally. So when
Mhm.
they're playing the Legos, that's what's going on for them. But for you, it might be, oh, gonna sit on the floor and put these things together again. Sometimes we get tired of playing Legos. If we can remember what's going on in their brain development is let's expand, let's understand, let's
Yes.
find let's find what's going on here. That means if you're cooking dinner and when they say come play with me, you can say we're going to do it in the kitchen this time. And here's maybe you give them a knife suitable for their age and they're going to cut the cucumber.
Right.
And they are going to do that. Maybe you're washing dishes, so you push a chair over and they are going to have a bowl of bubbles. Maybe they're old enough to wash with you side by side. Yes, your floor is going to get washed because it gets wet. But the point is that when they say play with me, they're not saying stop what you do and come do what I want to do with me. Though they are, they're not. What they're really asking for is be with me. I want
Yes.
to discover with you. So if you can remember that even when you're doing things at home, when you allow them to come alongside, even though they do it wrong, even though they do it messy, they are with you and doing the things with you, that also is play. It is a form of play for them because they're learning something new.
And they
Yesterday,
love being with you, like you said. I think
exactly.
that's what their heart is really saying.
Yep,
Be with me. And
exactly. Yesterday, my grandson was with me, and it was so fun. And he goes out to the garage and he finds a rope in my garage. And he strings the rope around two different trees, and they're about 15 feet apart or so. And he starts running in the track he made around this oval loop that connected the two trees. And then pretty soon his brother was running back and forth in this track, and they grabbed a carabiner and they're trying to close it up and open it up. And they're 3 and 4 years old. They played for close to an hour in the rope. Was I like tired of playing at the rope? Yep. Did I just stay present and took some pictures of them because they're laughing and laughing and laughing? This one rope was play, wasn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And they created their own play. That kind of play is so seldom done now because of screens. Screens are
I
often the play
know.
that is done. But if we can get our kids into the 3D world to do their play, that expands the brain differently and in its most natural form. And we want to do that to eliminate as much as we can on screens and get our kids playing with the world that they are living in.
And their imagination is stifled.
With oftentimes with screens, it is,
Yes.
yeah, it is because the thinking has been done for them and they're
Yes.
entertained. And even when you play like learning games on the screen, there's so much entertainment built in that the imagination part isn't happening. And you're right, imagination is what you want to build. So playing in the 3D world with just a rope, a stick and a log, all of that builds that imagination, which is the foundation then for creativity and problem solving and so many things.
I so believe in that. I love when I know when I was raising my own children, it was always like, well, what can we do with this? And how can we make it that way? And just try to open up their awareness to what's around them. Because I always felt like
Yes.
their imagination and their creativity would come alive. And, when my granddaughters in particular would come over, it was always about they love being in the kitchen. And so it was like, well, okay, let's learn how to make muffins. And I'd let them do it. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm there, I guide them and I help them, but It's all about their hands measuring the flour and the sugar. And I've taught them how to make pasta, homemade pasta, and they have to roll it out. And
Yeah,
it's just fun play. I may not be teaching words, but they're just learning to have fun. I just believe in fun and play
yeah.
because
Well, and
bonds you too.
absolutely. And what you're saying opens up the door for so much language. The kitchen is probably my favorite place for teaching language because
Oh,
you've got dump, pour, squeeze, measure, lift, bubbles, wet, dry. You've got concepts, you've got vocabulary, you've got not just hot and cold, but it's almost warm enough, it's boiling, it's what temperature is it. You've got everything in the kitchen.
it's a great playground.
It is a great playground. So, yes, the sensory and the texture that you're talking about that is so important, and I am too, this engage with the world, but it is also a big place for language.
Thank you. Now I feel better. I mean, I've always loved it, but now I feel even more empowered. So
We
let me
just talk
ask,
about what we're doing.
yes, yes. So how do you help a child who, um, maybe the parent, they're out and about, they're shopping, they're in the grocery store, and the child has a meltdown, yet they struggle with sharing the words that can communicate what they're feeling. What are some of the strategies that you can give to that parent to help them understand their child, what they're really trying to say, and help them with that meltdown?
That's a great question. And the meltdown is going to depend on the child in the moment. But what I will say to the parent is like, let's look at next time. Because if it's not handled this time very well, it's going to happen again, and you get another
Mhm.
opportunity to figure out how to
Yes,
handle it.
true.
Because you just get more opportunities until you figure it out.
Mhm.
So let's say to the child, we're going to go to the store and tell the expectations. And as much as possible, let's imagine the child is 3. It's a good age to imagine. And a 3-year-old isn't going to read. They're not going to understand much of the experience of a store if they haven't been there. They don't know what you expect of them unless you've told them. And if you, for example, go into a grocery store, they probably see things they want. And it may or may not be on your list, and it may or may not be in your timeline. So that meltdown is very possibly because they don't know why you're saying no, really. They don't know why we're moving so fast. They don't know why they're being ignored when they're in this delightful environment.
Mm.
But we do. We're
Yes,
trying to get in
yes.
and out of the grocery store and we want them
Right.
just to sit quiet in the cart.
Mm-hmm.
So, the thing that I teach my parents is sometimes when you go to the grocery store, you do have time to explore the grocery store together. Other times we go to the grocery store and we need to get in and get out. What
Mm-hmm.
is going to happen? And so stop and think about it. And then before you enter that store, talk to your child and tell them today is a day that you get to pick one thing. Only one thing. Any one thing, but only one thing. So when they first go in and they see gummies, then you say, okay. And then they find the bananas and they say bananas. And you say, okay, pick gummies or bananas. They put that back. They grab the bananas. Pretty soon they see crackers. Okay, bananas or crackers, which one you want? And they have to pick whichever one they want. That might be one way you handle that store that day. But the next time you might say to them, okay, now today we're going into the store, but today we don't have time to pick anything. Today you need to sit quietly in the cart because I'm here for 2 things and I'm going to move as fast as I can because we need to go to whatever place. And they might not like it, but that's your job today. And then you will have a much higher probability that you won't have that meltdown. Now, will you still? Possibly. But at least
Mm-hmm.
now you know that the child does understand, and now it switches from a meltdown to a tantrum. And tantrums are much more steerable. The difference between a meltdown and a tantrum would be a meltdown is when the child is expended, they're at the end of themselves, they cannot understand language, it's not working for them, there's nothing you can do, they're just done. Like the child that is so overtired and overhungry at the same time, they can't reason, they can't think, they're done. That's
Yes.
what I think of as a meltdown. But a tantrum is, I disagree with you, I am mad. But when you talk with them, sometimes they will argue with you, so they've got some access to their language. And when they get what they want, instantly the crying is done. That's a tantrum. And a tantrum is steerable. And so if your child is having a meltdown, then there's not much you can actually do other than soothe and help them just get through it and get out and then talk about it later, because they're spent. They need something.
Hmm.
They need sleep. They need food. They need something. They need love, care. Maybe they're lonely. I don't know what's going on, but something. Tantrum, on the other hand, is this might be more of a power struggle. I want what I want, and I don't want to listen to you. Who's going to be the boss today? I'm going to be the boss today, they're choosing. And then you have to stand up and say, well, I understand that's what you want, but my answer is no. And then they can have their fit. But you don't have to feel bad about it because you know that this is anger. And the way to
Hmm.
tell it is if there's an instant turn off when they think they got something, if it's an instant turn on and turn off, it's driven by what they want. And
That's really
oftentimes that's a lack of understanding.
That's true. A lack of understanding. Yeah, that's great advice because my heart always goes out. And I remember those days too in the grocery store.
Me too.
You're in public and you know how to handle it. Let me ask you, take it into another level where you have a child who is not able to communicate with their words very well, and they're struggling to tell you what they feel, but they can't say the right word. How do you help parents or grandparents understand what the child is trying to communicate when neither of you can understand the word that they're using?
Yeah, that's so hard and it's so common. And I deal with that every day in my work. What we like to do is give the child as much physical and visual support to use while they're still trying to learn to speak. So
Okay.
while they're not speaking well, while they don't have clarity, we practice with them with maybe it's books and other picture sources, with gestures. Show me, bring me to what you want, those kind
Okay.
of things, so that you give the child access in other ways. Maybe there's signs. If your children you know are trying to express something is stuck, that's an easy sign to teach them. Stuck. And
Okay.
they can say that their shoelace is stuck rather than throwing their shoe and screaming. And you're wondering what's wrong with your foot, because
Yeah.
they're mad that the shoelaces are knotted. But if you give a few of the words in sign, in picture, or in gesture, then we hope the child will be able to bring you. And this requires a lot of patience and teaching from mom and dad
Mhm.
to themselves regularly use, oh, I this made me frustrated. My shoelaces are stuck. This means stuck. And put your fingers at your throat to say stuck. The shoelaces are stuck. Do you want me to open them? And then, untie them and give them all those words. You know how we talked earlier about vocabulary?
Yes.
Open is one of the words that kids often use first, open and closed for their shoes, but Velcro shoes are open and closed, but laces are tied and untied. So we pair them up. Open and close. You want me to open the knot? I can open it. We untie a knot. We open it, we untie it, and go back and forth so the child understands that in that context, open and untie are the same thing. Because
Mm.
open means different things in different settings, doesn't it?
It does open a
It
door.
does.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So when the child has fewer words, pair the word they do know that you can understand with other words, and then try to give pictures, try to give signs and gestures. Tell them, can you show me? And then follow them. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, but those are the main things that I do.
So that's actually building another type of vocabulary with your child through gestures and signs. And
Mm-hmm.
can you just give us a couple more examples? Because I find this fascinating.
Sure. I will also say that you're building relationship with your child at that point too. Because when a
Trust.
child isn't able, exactly the word I was going to use is trust. Because when a child has been unable to communicate for a length of time, they have been experiencing repeatedly that they're not
Hmm.
understood.
Right.
Mom and dad have been experiencing repeatedly frustration over not understanding. Now you have this experience repeatedly that there's frustration in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So when you can build any of those times into your world where you are saying, show me, I'll come with you, let's do it together, and slow yourself down to be able to, you're building that trust, which is really the foundation of the child being able to learn from you. Otherwise, they want to perform and be good for you. Children naturally want to be good enough, right? And when they're
Sure.
not,
Mm-hmm.
there becomes a resistance, which is kind of inside the child and inside the mom and dad because there's been so much frustration already.
And I can just sense the child when there is a process like that, like show me, or the different gestures, I think it helps the emotions maybe to settle down a little inside the child.
Exactly. You come along slow. And so, to give you an example, this is what I'm describing is something that I do all the time with kiddos. So they come, they've got a mouthful of marbles, it sounds like when they're talking to me. I don't know
Yes.
what they're saying. And so my voice becomes low, my words become slow. I sit on the floor or get really low to them as well. So I'm looking eye to eye and I say, I want to hear what you have to say, but I didn't understand. And then these pauses, we need pauses. Can you show me? And then there's that silence that I just showed you.
Mhm.
The pause is the place where the child processes what you're saying and then thinks, okay, now I know what they said. Okay, now I know what to do. And if you keep talking, they have to start their processing over. Pause and give the child quiet space after each sentence you say and keep it short and be slow, low, and eye level, and then wait.
That silence is so important because adults, we just talk fast. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I hear you saying is that child needs time to process just that first question and to
Yes.
allow their silence to linger. Is there a length of time that a child needs to process that we should be aware of before we step in for that next question?
Absolutely. You watch the child's eyes. You see when
Okay.
they either drift off because they weren't able to hold the memory of that processing, or the light comes on and then they grab your hand and take you. You will
Um,
see as you get to know this particular child, and children are different. And so as I get to know the children better, then it's like, okay, I saw them get it, I saw them lose it. If they lose it, you get their attention again and shorten the sentence even more if you can and tell them less and pause.
so how much oh gosh, I'm just imagining this session, and I'm also thinking about the heart and soul of the child that, maybe they shut down, they get quiet, they feel maybe shame, maybe they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand shame, but they feel it, they
Mm-hmm.
feel frustrated, they feel bad about themselves, and maybe they're afraid to even keep trying. How do you help a child that's, presenting that way to you?
That's a beautiful question, really. That's one of the really, I love this because when I get those children into my room, I see the potential. And those children come, oftentimes they have something called childhood apraxia of speech, and that is a neurologic disorder where they cannot make their mouth do what they want it to do. And then suddenly they do, and then they can't. It's neurologic between the brain and the mouth. But it's not a
Okay.
thinking problem, it is a communication between the brain and the motor in the mouth, the muscles and nerve innervation. And those kids, when they come to my classroom, they'll often have their hands in their mouth and they're hiding and they won't look at you and they kind of make grunts and they don't really do anything and they just kind of put their head on the table. Sometimes there's tears, sometimes not, but they seem to always the common thing that represents shame, I think, for the kiddos is that they're shoving their hands in their mouth
Oh,
and hiding, no eye contact. And then it's the same thing. Talk low and slow, lower pitch, slow speech. Use their name and wait, a lot of waiting. And then when they start to look up and make eye contact with you, the trust is starting.
oh,
And then play a game that requires no words. Maybe it's stuffed animals or something like that. And then eventually you get a smile. So now you've got a little bit more trust. And then eventually, as you do these kinds of activities, usually by the end of a first session, I can get kids to say things. The longest I had was there was a little girl that came in kindergarten, really, really shamed by all of this. And
Mhm.
like she felt shame. You could just see it ooze from her. Not that her mom and dad did it, like they didn't shame her, but you could see that. And when I talked to mom and dad, everybody had tried everything, and the child wasn't getting it, and the child internalized it.
Yeah.
So by the time the child came to me, there was so much effort that had been put in. Mom and dad were ready to give up, and the child was really sad. She took about, I think it was 4 days, 4 sessions before she opened up to me. And I think that's the longest I've ever had anybody, as a little kid, open up, to take to open
Mm.
up. But normally at the end of a first session, a child will start to interact with you some. And then you build on that. But it is all based on whether or not you can build that trust. And then from there, we go to sounds, individual sounds. And then eventually you link two different sounds together. And that would be like short words, like at, so, is, short words.
Mhm.
And then you can get another part of a word put together using a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm.
So, what is the average age of the children that you work with? And is there a length of time, or is each child so individual as far as how many sessions that they would need?
It is very individual, very,
Mhm.
very individual. I've worked in public schools, and most of them have been rural, which means whoever walks through the door is what you get. Like whatever situation is going on.
Mhm.
So, whether we're talking about Down syndrome or what I just told you, childhood apraxia of speech, or maybe we're talking about the child that simply has an R or an S sound, or we have children that are speaking dual languages, we've got genetic disorders, whatever it is, like there's all anything that comes through. So, I didn't in a big city where I had a caseload of this particular type of condition, but I had all the children. So when
Mhm.
somebody would come through presenting something that was confusing, I learned. and then and then we needed to figure out how do we help this child with this condition.
And is there an age?
Oh,
What is
well,
the youngest child that you've worked with?
birth, because then you've got cleft palate, things like that
Oh,
at birth.
okay.
And then when I work with families who have little kids and that just want to be on board with learning, this would be the coaching, not as a speech path. I'm doing both hats right now.
Yes, yes.
But when I work with parents who want to just get a good head start, we start like at 6 months. And I just start teaching parents how to sign and what kind of sounds to work around and how you use vocabulary and how you use books. And then those babies will start signing at about 6 months.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
I have seen that, and I've always
Mm-hmm.
thought that was so amazing.
Yeah. But of course, like anything, it's what you're exposed to. Your baby isn't going to start signing at 6 months if you haven't been using it for a couple of months around them already. So let's say you begin at 6 months to sign with them. You can probably expect that they'll say more or milk or whatever you've been actually doing the most. They'll probably start saying it around 8 months or so.
And so you literally are helping parents before their children even get to that age of speaking. You are equipping them with
Yes.
tools and strategies to impart into their children the ability to hear and do words.
Yeah, communicate. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like my granddaughter, she is now 14 months old as we're recording.
Hmm.
And she started signing because of course my she's my daughter, like I said, she said, how do I do this, mom? So I showed her how to do it. And so her daughter started signing at about 6 months. And when her daughter started signing, it was like the tears went away. She cries when she
Oh.
has a diaper that she wanted to change or she's too tired or whatever, but it's amazing how little that child now cries. She's now 14 months and she'll sign all kinds of things, just some of it is gesture, all of it is clumsy, It's not, you have to kind of know. So if the sign for help is your fist on your hand coming up, she has two fists going up and side each other, and then more is supposed to be like this, and she does this. It's rudimentary signs because
Yes.
she's got poor gross motor control and fine motor control so far. Yet she's doing them, and we look at her and we all say, "Oh yeah, you can have that," or "No, not yet. You have to wait." And then we give her weight with our fingers when she doesn't feel like waiting. So we just wiggle our fingers for her and keep saying wait. And then she can, especially like kids always seem to want you when you're on the toilet, right? And you're saying, wait. So you take your hand and wiggle your finger saying, wait. That's when they want you. So there are
Oh,
times that now even she knows, oh, okay. She looks at the fingers. And then when the fingers stop wiggling, she's like, now?
oh, how cute. I
Yeah,
just love this.
yeah.
So I'm fascinated by everything that you have shared today. And how do people reach out to you? Do you do workshops? Do you recommend people connect with you online?
Mhm.
Because I can just sense there are so many people right now that just want to know more and learn from you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have a group that I'm doing this summer. I have intentions to extend it out. I am piloting a group coaching this summer, and that can be found on my website, which is thelanguageofplay.com. One-on-one coaching is something that is always available, and that would be something too. You can go to my website and you can book a call. We can talk about it, and we can see if that is the best strategy for somebody. And then for workshops and webinars, at this point, I do them as asked for the audience that requests. But I haven't gotten myself organized with marketing and with the
Hmm.
online part to establish it myself first and then go tell everybody. I'm not that put together yet on that. I have a couple of webinars that I have done. Um, so, yes, I like it. I do it, but
Yes,
it's
and I
not
can
something
tell
that I'm
you're
putting.
excellent at it. And so I have one more question before I
Yeah.
open it up for you to share with our audience. So, what I'm gathering from today is don't wait until your child is struggling. Of course,
Right.
come if your child is struggling, but
Mm-hmm.
you work with parents when their babies are at very young age to actually equip the parents to train their children in communication. Is it both?
It's both. So,
Yes.
in my speech pathology job, I am working with the kids. In my business of the language of play, I work with parents. And I primarily do age 1 to 7, but I do work with parents, broader than those ages, but I target 1 to 7 because that's usually at the age of 1 is when parents are starting to recognize, oh, I think I should do something different. Because up until that point, it's a lot of survival, frankly. You're
Oh, it's
trying to
so
sleep,
true.
right? And then about the child is about 1, and okay, now they're kind of walking. I should be able to expect talking, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but how do I do the next stage? That's when parents start to get ready. And then about 3 and 4 or 5, parents start to notice, oh, there's some sounds that need to be different, or my child doesn't really string sentences together very well. So at that age, parents tend to come to me when they recognize that there is an issue. But I love, love, love it when parents come to me before they realize there's an issue because I can always say, here's your next step or do it this way. And everybody that I talk to that comes into the group program or the one-on-one program, they all have stuff because we're human and we have stuff.
Sure.
And
Sure.
your children know what you know how to teach. And not all of us know the same things to teach. I certainly have to hire lots of people to do things I don't know how to do.
Same
But this
here.
area is what I know how to do.
We
So
stay
that
in
I
our
can reach out and
lane.
help. Yes, yes, this is my lane. This is what I can do and I do it well. And there's a whole lot of things that I need help with.
Oh, I'm with you on that. We know what we know and we know what we don't know how to do. And so
Yes.
we find those and use their strengths. So
And
in
sometimes we don't know that we don't know,
that's true.
which is oftentimes in the case of speech and language development with kids. Oftentimes parents don't know that they don't know it because they expect spontaneity with it. And sometimes it works like that. But it's still not just spontaneous, it is exposure and then it's production.
Oh, I love all of that. So, in closing, Dina Lynn, what would you love to share with anyone who's listening right now that maybe is in a season of frustration, or just need to know that there's hope?
Thank you. That's so important. And that happens for every parent, every every parent. We all hit our moments of frustration. Sometimes we have our frustration because we've got some things going on that are really hard to deal with, and sometimes it's that we need to take care of ourselves and we haven't been. And so our frustration is really our lack of having our own needs met. So the first thing is that make sure that you fill your own cup first. And then from that full cup, you can take care of your child. I know that's easier said than done. It is not easy. So sometimes it just means feed yourself properly and do your best to get the best sleep you can. After that, I want to say play. Remember that play is a mindset that you can take into your full life as an adult. If you start to look at your problems as an adventure, as an exploration of what could be, if you're able to do a shift in how you think about frustration, that will calm your nervous system. And when our
Mm.
nervous systems get calm, our kids sense it. They are like little radars that respond. So it's really all about mom and dad. It really is about how can you take care of yourself and how can you reframe or think differently about some of your frustrating experiences so that you can shift your body, shift your
Mm.
experience.
That is wonderful advice. And I'm so grateful that you have been here with us today. And I just want to say to the Transition Tribe, thank you so much for being here once again, because we are learning about the power of transitions. And sometimes transitions are difficult, they're not easy. And when you find yourself as a parent and you're in this season now and you see your child struggling, this can be difficult, but there is a way to get over that transition bridge with an expert like Dina Lynn, who I know you have been listening to today, who has the heart. First of all, I love to listen to people have that. She has the heart for your child, and she has the skills and the expertise to help you cross that transition bridge with your child and to bring communication into a time of play and a time of understanding and the wholeness that you're looking for your relationship with your child and for your child. And so I highly recommend that you connect with Dina Lynn. I will have all of her contact information in my show notes. And just remember, tribe, there is purpose and there is power in our life's transitions.